What does the topic of influence mean to you, Dr. Taylor, when you think about that word?
I mean, the first thing I think about when the people along your journey that kind of influence your development and formation is kind of like the first thing that entered my mind. And then, of course, I went to who were those people in my life. So I mean, that's where my mind went initially. The biggest one was Master Sergeant Robert Doty. I was in junior ROTC in high school, and he was one of my teachers, instructors, professors. And he just had huge impact on my life, very profound.
Welcome to the Find Your Influence podcast with Anton Guinea, where we unpack all things influence and we help leaders particularly find their influence by talking to amazing humans and finding out what influence means to them, who they've been influenced by and who they have influenced. And this podcast episode, proudly sponsored by the Guinea Group of companies. The Guinea Group helps leaders upgrade, upskill, uplift their teams and their influence. Welcome to the Find Your Influence podcast with Anton Guinea, where we talk all things influence with amazing humans. It's an amazing topic, influence, and it's one that, you know, as part of your DISC profile, high eyes, people ask me what it's like to be a high influencer. There was no podcast on influence when I started doing it. And the guests I get on really add a lot of value to the topic of influence, like Dr. Christopher S. Taylor, PhD, today. I'm really keen to talk to. Dr. Christopher is a distinguished American mental health leader, licensed professional counselor, author, educator, and the founder of Taylor Counseling Group, a rapidly growing multi-location practice based in Dallas, Texas, with a career grounded in clinical excellence and community impact. Dr. Taylor has established himself as a thought leader in accessible mental health care and professional counseling development. As owner and lead psychotherapist of Taylor Consulting Group since 2015, great run. He's driven the organization's mission to provide affordable, reliable, and accessible mental health services throughout Texas, expanding to numerous locations and serving clients of all ages. Unbelievable. The practice embodies his commitment to community wellbeing, clinical rigor, and stigma reduction in mental health support. Dr. Taylor is also the president of the Counseling for the Future Foundation, an organization focused on reducing barriers to professional counseling by supporting masters and doctoral students entering the profession. Love it. I was one of those at one stage. In addition, he's also the co-founder of the Epiphany app. There you go. Hopefully I got that right. A digital platform designed to help users process emotions and engage with mental health resources. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Christopher S. Taylor. Did I capture everything?
Yeah, I'm happy to be. Oh, you use this word nobody's ever used before, which is distinguished. I don't think I've earned distinguished quite yet. I mean, maybe the hair is distinguished. You know, I got the salt and pepper going for me, but outside of that, I don't think distinguished fits my adjectives.
Right. So what does it take to be distinguished? I wonder, what is a distinguished human?
I mean, probably the Nobel Peace Prize, really, if we're being honest. That's the bar, I think, right there to be distinguished.
Okay. And is that a goal at one stage, Dr.?
No, God, no.
Right.
No, if I'm in charge of that, we're all in trouble, man.
I love it. Very, very quickly on the topic of influence, and we're going to talk through this because I don't think that there's many professions that have more influence on humans. You know, you're a mental health practitioner and you serve, you support, you help people get through the toughest times of their life, and that's a really important role. What does the topic of influence mean to you, Dr. Taylor, when you think about that word?
I mean, the first thing I think about when you guys reach out to me and say we want to talk about influence is just sort of the people along your journey that kind of influence your development and formation is kind of like the first thing that entered my mind. And then, of course, I went to who were those people in my life. So I mean, that's where my mind went initially.
And who were some of those people for you, Dr. Taylor?
I mean, the biggest one was Master Sergeant Robert Doty. I was in junior ROTC in high school, and he was one of my teachers, instructors, professors. And he just had huge impact on my life, very profound.
In what way, if that's right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I yeah, I didn't grow up like poor, but definitely I was the first person in my family to go to college, and the only person in my family not to go in the military. And coming out of high school, I went to Texas A&M University, and it was a big jump for me because it was leaving Florida and going to Texas. And yeah, there was just a lot of concern and a lot of worry and unknown. Didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And I remember Bob sat me down and he said, Chris, the only thing worth investing in is yourself. So you should invest in yourself at all costs. And so I have not stopped doing that since then.
Nice.
Yeah.
Continual lifelong learner, no doubt.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so for Bob, what was it Bob said you invest in yourself. That's great advice. But what else did Bob do that it probably wasn't just that one conversation. What else was it about Bob that was influential?
Oh, I mean, he was probably, I know, not probably, he was my first, I would say, male adult mentor, when you're a kid, you have like other kids that maybe you look up to, or you're like, oh yeah, you have good friends. And then you have your relationship with your father, which, is either complex or good or whatever it is. But at some point in your early formation, moving out, when you start to really like get the fact that the world is big, and you're like, it's a lot bigger than I kind of thought it was. Then, usually along comes some kind of mentor archetype, right? And in my case, that was Master Sergeant Robert Doty, who I don't know if he just kind of took an interest in me or if it was just sort of a thing that happened, but you find yourself saying, "Hey, I got a problem and I need somebody to talk to," and then right there he is, Oh, absolutely, yeah, yeah. They're there for me, and I think it's hard for because I'm a bit of a new dad. I have a 8-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old boy. And I know that there will come a moment in their lives where they need to go find other adults that don't see them as children. And I think one thing I'm starting to learn, which I'm sure my parents have tried to tell me a lot over the years, is that I think you just, as a parent, you just kind of never see your child as an adult. You're just kind of always like, you just see them as that helpless, little loving ball of, snot. You're just like, what this, and you're just like, yeah. And so then I think what happens is we go out into the world and then we find another adult or two that has sort of made their way and has some components that we admire, right? And we're like, oh man, like you say to yourself, oh, I want to be like that. Like that excites me. That's the sort of thing that I look up to. And then, you develop a relationship with that person and they give back and do that.
And then hopefully over time,
you
lean into that and you become that human that they are in some way, shape or form, and probably take their goods and leave ads.
Yeah, I forget the author who said it, but it's we're the summation of the like 5 closest people in our life or something. The 5, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the idea, right? Is you want to surround yourself with people who you admire, who you look up to. I mean, one of the things I always strive to be is to be the the not most intelligent person in the room. Because if I'm the smartest person in the room, well, everyone should leave quickly. But but I want like somebody that knows this better than I do. I want people around me that are really, really intelligent, because that means that I'm gonna grow. They're gonna push me to get better.
Dr. Taylor, for everyone out there, I'm talking about, and thank you for that for a start. Thank you to that Master Sergeant Robert. That's really cool. Great explanation, and I think being admirable, which is what you talked about, is a really profound skill set, and potentially, Master Surgeon Robert didn't even know that he was, admirable, and that's really interesting. Probably a humble human. So it's led you on this lifelong journey right through to PhD. Can you just take everyone through what it means. We've had a few PhDs on, but I probably haven't really unpacked what that means just for our viewers and listeners. What's a PhD, and what was your thesis topic, for example?
I think, the first question I would ask is, are you happy? And if the answer is yes, then you should not pursue getting a PhD whatsoever. It is such a kick in the stomach, man. Oh my God. I mean, my dissertation, I remember going through IRB like round 5 or 6 and just walking out of this office like, this is just so defeating. Like there's just no chance that we're going to get this done. But we did. We got it done. My PhD was on social learning theory. It was a study of differences between completers and non-completers of family drug court programs within the southwestern United States. And that's the exact title. And I've memorized that title because I said it at least 15,000 times. So, but basically what we did is we looked at these like family drug court programs throughout the western United States, which was really just like 3 states. But we pulled from like 13, I think it was 13 drug courts, and we had a list of completers. I think it was something in the range of like 500 people who have gone through these programs in these 13 counties. And we went through the historical data, and we said if they did X number of days in treatment, X number of days in AA, X number of days and for those of you that are AA is Alcoholic Anonymous, so I don't know if that's just a U.S. term or what. So people who went through all of these things, and we found out that the ones that spent more time in treatment, meaning they did something once a day that was treatment related, their chance of recidivism, which means, completing the offense again and returning back into care, dropped radically by like 70%. It was a huge drop. And so what we proved was that these family drug court programs, they work. And they work because of social learning theory, because we were changing the environment in which the individual lives versus operant or classical conditioning where we're using our stick and our carrot. And what we've learned is that there is no stick that hits hard enough, and there is no carrot sweet enough that heroin will not defeat. So, so when you're addicted to heroin, you can have all of your children taken. You have 5 children. You have every single one of them taken away, and you still won't be able to escape the addiction. It's too powerful. What it does to our brain, to our bodies, it's just far too powerful. The addiction is just so crushing. But what we did learn is that when we change the environment, that will influence new behavior. And so basically what happens is we have this wonderful woman, this lovely young mom who probably she's probably on her 3rd kid. She's probably only 19, which means that, 2 of those kids were preteen pregnancies, right? Born into a rough home, a rough area, has to deal with poverty, whatever, gets addicted to drugs somewhere along the way, maybe not by choice, just pushed on her by one of the fathers or her husband or her partner or, just somebody in the area. She ends up going to court. She ends up going to jail. She has a record, right? And now when you have a record, it's hard to get a job. And so what do? Well, I just go back to selling the drugs, right? I say, okay, well, you know what? Your new baby just tested positive for heroin at birth. So that's not good. So the court comes in and they take those kids away, and they take all of them. They don't just take that one, they take them all. And now your kids are in foster care, and you say, well, I'll do whatever it takes. But heroin doesn't agree with you. And it says, no, I'm going to keep going. We're going to keep doing this heroin. We don't care about the kids. We just care about more heroin. And so eventually you can white knuckle it for as long as you want, but eventually she's going to go back into that environment, right? So what we do at the social learning level, at the court level, the family drug program levels, we built new environments for them. We got them new housing. We got them mentors. We got them sponsors in AA. We got them, bus passes. We help them get cars. We help them, they're not coming to court to get yelled at by a judge once a month for not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They were coming to court every week to get praised on what they had done. and to continue monitoring this social change that they were going through. And we found is that when we change that environment, when we gave them a new path forward, when we gave them clothes for an interview, they got the job. And then when they got the job, they built income, and then they eventually got their kids back, and then they never went back into those old environments. They broke all those relationships. They got away from prostitution. They got away from selling drugs, and they became, happy functioning members of society.
And they broke their heroin addiction
Yes.
finally?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, they're not all success stories, but yes, we saw a radical increase at that level. Radical.
Wow. So environment is everything is the message that I took away from that.
Well, yeah, the social learning theory talks about our social environment, right? It's that, yeah, like we just talked about those 5 people that, were the average of these 5 people. That's your environment, right? So imagine that you, let's say you move from Australia to the United States, and, you move maybe to Salt Lake City, and every one of your neighbors is a Mormon, not saying anything against Mormonism. I'm just saying, let's just say that that's the case. At some point, with enough influence from the people around your social circle, you're going to start, that's going to keep coming up over and over and over and over again, until eventually one day you very well might just say, hey, what's this Joseph Smith guy about? And then maybe you might, find a girl and you fall in love and you say, oh, well, she's Mormon, and so I'll become Mormon, right? Or you can borrow from my life story, where I come from a non-religious household, and I move to Texas, and then I marry this, wonderful woman who lives in Texas and is from Texas, and she's Catholic, and so it's like, so we are now Episcopalian, so it's like. So sometimes we make these choices in a very active way, and sometimes life kind of just brings it to our doorstep. Yeah.
And is it happy wife, happy life? Is that still a thriving term? Is it in the
I
state?
think that still holds true. Yeah, for sure.
I love it. I love it. Thanks for sharing. Great story. And I guess in a nutshell, you spent probably 3 to 5 years studying social learning theory and trying to write a story about that, and trying to write a thesis on it that was critiqued relentlessly by academics who liked it or didn't at different times, and sent it back to you for review, probably on a number of occasions.
Oh,
You
yeah.
had to keep going back and doing that work.
Yep.
But then that's the story of a PhD.
Yep.
It will make you unhappy.
It's yeah. So it was a long process of, developing the idea of what I wanted to study, and, the requirement for a dissertation to be approved is that it has to be unique, new knowledge that we are adding to the field, right? So it can't be something that somebody else has already done, and we have done a lot as a society. Human beings have been busy for a long time. So you just have to get really, we have to get really granular. And so, like, you saw that title was like very specific. And so like, that's how, like, in the weeds you have to get. And then you build out this dissertation. Mine was, I think, about 200 pages. You have to do a quantitative or qualitative study. Mine was a quantitative study, which is data specific. And then you have to run some type of experiment. I ran a MANOVA, or a multi-analysis of variance, which is what that stands for. And you have to get an ethics approval, which was called an internal review board, which because we have this thing called the Geneva Convention, right? So we can't go wandering around doing studies on people all day, which is for the good.
Like we used to.
Yeah. So it makes it hard to, say, well, how are we studying this topic? And so we have to do that. Then I had to go into the recruiting phase. Well, I have to get all that approved, right? Then I have to get my idea approved, my variables approved. Then I got to go to recruiting. So I got to go down to all of these drug courts, and I have to say, hey, I would like access to your data. Here's all the hoops I'm ready to jump through. Here's the university that's backing my study. Here's what you get in return, which is a free study. of your program, and just kind of all that stuff. You got to go through all that. You got to get all that approval. Then you got to go get the data. Then you got to mine the data. Then you got to do your experiment. Then you got to write the whole thing up. And then you give it to your mentor who rejects it. And then you rewrite it. Then you give it back to your mentor, and she goes, "Really, Chris, this is not your best work." And I was like, at this point, I don't even like, just stamp it. I don't care at this point. She's like, "Nope, do it again." So then you go back and you got to do it again. And then you take it to your committee, and then, then you got to take it to the committee, and then they will tell you if it is, approved or not. Then you got to go argue. Then you got to argue it, right? Then you got to do your oral argument, and you got to go and defend it, right? Defend your dissertation. And then you got to give it to the library, and the librarian has her way with it. And let me tell you, they are pros with red ink, man. They are pros with that. I still don't know what a semicolon does exactly, but that librarian had opinions about it. I'll tell you that.
And I'm telling you, I'm tired just thinking about it. Yeah. It sounds like a whole lot of hard work to me.
Yeah. So just a lot of dedication, but yeah, it's worth it.
Good on you. Congratulations. Well done. Now, how has that shaped, I guess, your clinical work? So, as we heard in your intro, your work now is really focused on professional counseling, and you're making counseling accessible, affordable.
Yeah. So Taylor Counseling Group, we're a company built on values. I believe as an existentialist that values are the building blocks of identity. So it's sort of like the cells that make up our body. So we find that when we make choices or decisions that are in conflict with our values, that we tend to go into this dark place called an existential crisis. You have an identity crisis, or you feel intense shame or guilt because you did something that you believe you shouldn't have done, right? And so one value, not a big deal. The cookie was just sitting there. It was next to the free cookie tray, but it definitely wasn't a free cookie, but I took it anyways. And you're like, it's okay. It's not a big deal, even though I believe that stealing is wrong. Life goes on. You'll be fine. But you keep doing it over and over again. And then the choices get bigger and bigger. And then, you get into these conflicts with yourself. Right. And so one of our core values that we set up as a company was human capital. That's like our bedrock core value. And that is what came out of my dissertation, was this idea of human capital. And some people, they hear that and they think we're talking about like trading people as money, and that's not what it's about. So what we believe in, and what social learning theory kind of proved in the family drug court program, is that as we invested in these people, they got to their best self. And when that mom got to her best self, who do you think is the very next person she invested in? Was her children. And then they grow up in a stable home, or at least a healthy home. And then they invest in other people when they get older, right? And so that's this idea. So one of our core values at Taylor Counseling Group is that we believe in, we're an employee first organization. We believe in investing in our people heavily, and giving them that ability to be at their best. And if our therapists are at their best, then they're going to do their best work, which means our patients are going to get the best care that they can get. And then they're going to go home, and what are they going to do? Well, they're going to invest in their friends and families and all of those things. And they're going to be better workers and better members of society. And so that's kind of the idea.
Nice. Wow. And how do you invest in your staff? So for everyone out there that sort of says, well, what's a human capital people first approach mean? Does it mean regular training? Does it just mean good leadership? Do you do leadership training? There's the sort of work we provide. Like, what's that look like for you?
Yeah, so it's all the above. The first thing is, I was at a conference one place and I heard somebody talk about how they're client first. It's like our counseling group is client first. And I kind of laughed a little bit, and I realized, I was like, not to be rude, because I don't mean this to come off wrong, but 90% of clients that come into therapy, the therapeutic relationship, don't really know what the real issue is. They don't really know what they need or what they want. Also, they're not trained in, what types of modalities are most important, or what works here, what works there. So if a client comes in and they say, I would like CBT to work on this, but the therapist is like, you actually need this. I mean, we're going to go like, we're, employee first, right? The other thing we look at, how we look at that is we we look at anything we roll out, we consider, does this benefit our employees first? Then we ask the other questions, like how will this impact our people first? Then we ask, well, how will this do that? How will this do that? We ask about our people first, then we ask about how this will impact our clients, then we ask how this will impact our processes or any of those things.
It's interesting you say that, because Richard Branson always says, train your people so they can leave, but treat them so they'll stay. And I think that's that investment in humans.
Yeah.
I like it. So moving on from that, let's talk about the influence that you might have had maybe on your staff or maybe clients, or patients, whatever the right word is for you. And a lot of people struggle with this question, though I ask it because I'm really interested in what it is that you do as a human to try and influence others. Like there's people that rely on, look at that as an intro. There's people that rely on Harlequin's counselling group for their livelihood. So you got a big responsibility, and I know you wouldn't take that lightly. An employee first, you don't. But what have you? Is there one person or a group of people who you're most proud of that you've had an influence on, for example?
I wouldn't say that I have like sparked this big influence in someone else, but I would say that we as an organization have definitely helped, or provided a place to help a lot of people. For me, it's not so much about the influence as it is about creating this space that's where somebody can come and be raw and real, and I think what I love about therapy the most is that I have this really cool thing that I get to do, which is I get to meet people at their absolute worst and I get to leave them at their best. And I just love watching people go through that experience. So I wouldn't say I've influenced anybody. I would say that I have created space that allows people to challenge themselves and to push themselves into newer, better heights, to realize their true self, to self-actualize, to be more authentic.
Wow. Self-actualize. I love that word. Came out of that great white paper from 1943. What does that mean? That's it's sort of a self-development term. Well, it sort of started as a motivation at work term, but what is self-actualization, just for our audience out there, or our listeners and viewers? You're about to learn a new term.
Yeah. So from an existential point of view, self-actualization is this idea of living authentically. It is living your authentic life, making choices that are in line with your values, and living the way that you choose to live, not the way that you feel like other people want you to live, or a way that you should live. So I think that's it. It's not. It's often misconstrued as achieving enlightenment or ultimate happiness, and that's not the case. Because I don't think the goal of life is to be happy. I think our goal is to be authentic. Because when you're living authentically, then you tend not to worry about things as much. You tend to be true to yourself, and I think that's what's the saying that we tell our kids whenever they get picked on by a bully. It's like those that matter don't mind, and those that mind don't matter.
I was just going to ask Dr. Taylor, what the word authentic, and I love unpacking big words like self-actualization, or the word influence, or even the word leadership, or the word respect.
Mm-hmm.
For our listeners and viewers out there, some of them might be listening to this and going, you know what, I'm probably not self-actualized, I'm probably not living authentically, I probably am a people pleaser, and I'm trying to live to make others happy, or live because my parents said I should go to medical school, or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
But what does it mean to live authentically? Can you give people a bit of an idea of just how to define sort of that outcome?
Yeah.
Please.
So I'm glad that you brought up the whole, like, my parents made me go to medical schools concept, because I've worked with a lot of attorneys over my career that fall into the attorney trap. And I don't know if you're familiar with this concept, but there's basically like a strong push to say, go to a top tier law school, right? So I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to go to Harvard Law. Well, now I got Harvard Law debt. So from there, you go to top tier law firm where you say, okay, now I'm working at the best law firm in the country. I'm making a lot of money. And I'm going to pay off all my debt so that I can go do the work that I want to do, right? So I can go do immigration work or pro bono work or whatever it is, right? Well, then all of a sudden you find out that if you're not wearing an Armani suit, nobody takes you seriously at this law firm. So now you go out and you buy all these nice stuff because you can afford it, and you still got all this debt. So the next thing you know, you end up with 3 summer homes, a closet full of Armani, a Maserati in the garage, in each of the garages, and you're still like just in crushing debt or no debt, but you just can't get out of this lifestyle because you're just kind of trapped to it. And then one day you wake up and you're like, I hate doing this, but I'm stuck. And so it's just referred to as a lawyer trap. I've worked with a lot of lawyers who were just like, I got into this because I want to do pro bono work, or I want to do this immigration law or this type of law or that, and I'm just kind of feel like I'm stuck. And so, so when we talk about what is being authentic, I think that's where you ask yourself that question, like, am I making the choices on a day-to-day basis that are in line with what I believe in? You know, with at my core, does this make me feel good? And if it does, then you are living authentically. If it does not, then, you know, it's time to go figure that out. And it's not the choices that always have to change. Sometimes it's the values that change. You know, just because you grew up in, I don't know, we'll say southeastern United States, and you probably had a big influence from the Republican Party, we'll say. So maybe you grew up in a Republican household and you're like, I'm a Republican. And then you move, say, to California, right? And then maybe you find yourself, you know, around a new friend group of Democrats, right? And you might want to make different choices now based off of new values that maybe you are adopting, right? So it's okay to change our values. It's okay to change our choices. We just want to make sure that, you know, we're doing it with intention, that it feels true to me. It's good for me. You know, we're not really causing a bunch of harm to other people. I mean, that's kind of a big deal, you know. You know, we don't want to go like way off the deep end, you know.
Help, not hurt, heal,
Yeah.
not harm, I say.
Yeah, you know. So yeah, and then we're able to kind of make those choices and say, this is me, you know, this is the me that I want to be. And also understand that might change over time. That the me that you want to be absolutely will change over time. It will change with experience. It will change with new ideas, new exposures. I mean, you know, you know, a couple of years ago, we didn't have to ask ourselves, what are our ethical viewpoints around artificial intelligence? You know, now you have to say, well, how do I feel about this? You know, maybe you're a professor and your question is, do I allow my students to use it, or do I tell them they can't use it? You know, or how do I approach it in a healthy way? And now you got to kind of like experience those new values and choices, and you got to go and build those and be open-minded to the fact that you might want to change them later. You know, I mean, if you were a product of the 80s or 90s in the United States, you're probably very familiar with the DARE initiative, you know, where we told kids not to do drugs. Drugs are bad, right? Especially marijuana. That's the worst. That's the gateway drug, you know. And now we have something like 13 states where that's been legalized, you know. So,
Right.
so like how
That's
many,
a big value change.
yeah. So like how many people now are, you know, sitting here in the United States legally using marijuana who, you know, 30 years ago, that was like, oh my God, you society would have said you were a degenerate. Like, you were a terrible person. You were breaking the law, you know, and now you might just be hanging out with your buddies on a Saturday night and you're just like, hey, let's do some gummies, you know? And it's, I mean, so like, I think that's kind of a big example of how our authentic identity can sort of change over our lifespan, you know?
Wow. That's a phenomenal example when you think about that, how radical that is, because in Australia, you know, obviously marijuana is still an illegal substance, and, you know, it's not, well, it's not widely used that I know of it. I'm sure it probably is, but I've never taken a drug, so I've never been around it, which is really cool. So I've been lucky enough not to sort of get too much into it, but I just, that would be a really massive mindset shift for me to
And
live in a society or a state where marijuana was legalized.
yeah, and let me be clear too. Like I'm not endorsing the use of it for any purpose, but it's a fascinating concept now that you can work in a state like Texas, where I am, where it's illegal, and then you can go on a ski trip to Denver, which I know a lot of people are doing that right now, and you can get as high as you want, and then you can come back, and then you can fail like a random urine screening at your work, the next day, so you just it's just fascinating to me that we have come this far over, just like a not that long of a period, and I also think, like, I remember, being in grade school, and just like how important the teachers were talking about how you have to know how to spell everything, and you have to know how to use a dictionary, and you have to know how to write in cursive, and you have to know how to balance a checkbook. And I'm like, none of these skills apply today. I mean, now I could just talk to an AI and just say, I need you to write this for me. And I can never use my fingers, my hands, right? Spell check will catch most of it, I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't learn these skills. I'm just saying it's very new now, and how much things have changed. So just imagine, like, if you really hold this value hard, you really believe in this value, I wonder where that'll be in 20 to 30 years.
That's right. I wonder whether we will actually be writing stuff down in 20 to 30 years. I'd predict not. And even though I've read the science that says how important writing is, because of all of the neural pathways that it sort of fires up, and how much it sort of staves off cognitive decline over time too, just by writing 15 minutes a day was the number that I read.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
Yep. I'm 100% in support of that. I love the pen and paper. I have a little notebook I carry with me regularly, specifically to write down thoughts and things. But yeah, I mean, how much of that is going to be a novelty, at some point? I mean, will we still have U.S. mailboxes?
Good question. And yeah, that's right. Will we send a letter? That's a bit of a novelty now to get a thank you card, so that's what we send them.
Yeah. I've seen people now switching, moving away from physical Christmas cards. That was a bit of an interesting experience this year, with people just being like, "Here's our digital Christmas card." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, that's right. The world is a changing. What do they say? That change is inevitable and growth is optional, Dr. Taylor.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think for me, the most important thing that I wrote down today is be the me that I want to be. I love that. That for me is the best definition of authenticity that I've come up with, because I get the question a little bit in leadership coaching if I ever use the word authentic, because someone said to me one time, Dr. Taylor, well, if I was authentic, no one would like me, because I would just say what I want. And for most people, authentic means honest, and it just means saying what's on your mind. And, in 2026, saying what's on your mind is probably going to get you into trouble.
Yes.
Sadly.
Yes.
And, we just came out of Australia Day, which is a really controversial day now in Australia. And so, you've just sort of got to be careful what you're saying. So authenticity isn't really about just, verbalizing everything. You still got to turn your filter on in between Wernicke's and your Broca's area in your brain, of course.
Right. I think there's I love that. I think that there's a lot that goes into this. One is the concept of triggers. There's a big difference between a trigger and being offensive, right? I firmly believe that you are responsible for your own triggers. Okay, you are responsible for your own triggers. Nobody else in this world is responsible for tiptoeing around, whatever your triggers are. Right now, that doesn't give now, but that also is not to say that you should be, aggressive or dressing somebody down or screaming in their face or using profanity or beating them down. Like those are still, like, that's still unacceptable, right? But you are responsible for your triggers. So when we talk about using that filter, one thing, I will always coach definitely younger employees on, or newer therapists in the field, is that be you, just be the professional version of you, you know, where it's like we can say this and that, you know, we can maybe play a little fast and loose with the rules over here. You can be a bit of a cowboy over there, but in general, you know, like be, you know, just be aware, you know, well, read the room, you know. So for the person that's saying like, well, if I was authentic, nobody would like me. I mean, what does that say about the people that you're spending time with? Maybe the problem is to change your environment. I mean, maybe the issue is like you should go hang out with people that would accept you for being who you are. But if that person is also saying, well, this is the authentic me, is I would interrupt people, I would yell at them, and I would use profanity, then we would say, okay, let's try that in a way that's not offensive. You know.
Let's learn the skill of emotional intelligence
Yeah.
and enrollment.
Yeah, let's develop some EQ. Let's learn the difference between a response and a reaction. Let's take a few seconds, take a deep breath, you know, and then come back and say, all right, how do we handle this?
Breathe, pause, and refocus, as we say, BPR. And I think what that person was trying to say that day was, I've got really strong beliefs about things that in 26 I can't verbalize. And I think that's probably a really, I think that's a good thing. I think, you know, if you listen to Jordan Peterson says, don't have a voice, don't have an opinion outside your work unless you've got two streams of income. Because if you have an opinion in 2026 and you say the wrong thing and you do trigger someone, or you trigger a group of people, all of a sudden, you know, your primary source of income, you'll get cancelled, the cancel culture, if that makes sense. And I just, I just, you know, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But it's different.
Well, no, I think the good takeaway from that though is that, you know, we have different environments, right? Like I think I like Game of Thrones, right? The popular HBO TV series, right? Stranger Things, big fan of Stranger Things. I would never take both of those to church on Sunday and watch them at church. You know, does that kind of make sense? Like I also don't think it's okay to watch Stranger Things with like a 4-year-old, right? Or something like that, right? Or, you know, I mean, like, so it's like appropriate for that time and place. And there are some companies that have political opinions. There are a lot of companies that don't. Like Taylor Counseling, for example, our big belief is that we believe that therapy is for everybody. And so we do not support any causes or events that are not about mental health, right? But I believe that a straight white male and a black LGBTQ woman deserve the exact same kind of care, specific to their needs. But they deserve the same access to care. They deserve. I think it's for everybody. It's for everybody. And so we have a policy at our company where, you're free to live your personal life as an employee, but, we ask that you don't make very sharp, political or religious statements, and those kinds of things that would represent the company, right? Like, go do whatever you want in your private time, but, don't bring it into the company. And we don't allow for, controversial political discussions or religion, because we're just like, hey, that's not what we're about. Like, we support you, believe, you believe whatever you want to believe, go believe it over there. And I have political opinions and I have religious opinions, and I keep those to myself in a work capacity. Now, and at home or wherever, I might share those, but in no way am I being inauthentic about who I am by not saying what I believe at work, right? I'm not being inauthentic. I'm because authenticity is not so much about expressing my values or winning other people over. It's about living. It's about making choices and living with congruence and incongruency with my values, right? It's about making choices that are in line with them. And so it's not so much about talking about this or that. It's more about the choices that I make. For me, a big value is empathy. So it's like, was I being empathic with that person that day?
Wow. I love that. beautifully put, because I think the upshot from this, and this has really helped me clarify some thinking on this. Thank you, Dr. Taylor. That there's an environment for every conversation, and at work, bring your professional self. I love that. But at the end of the day, if you've got political or religious beliefs, now they're going to drive your behavior anyway to a degree, because we're conditioned, we have conditioning. And the thing is that if you're congruent, if you say, Dr. Taylor, and for everyone out there, what congruent means is that you say what your behavior lines up with your belief system. So you don't say one thing and then do another. Well, I believe in, empathy, but, I don't understand people and I hurt them. And, I love that congruency piece, because I think being congruent is part of influence. Really hard to influence someone if you aren't congruent, if you say one thing and do another.
Yeah.
That's another big topic of leadership, I think, and we talk about that a lot, being congruent. And having, your body language congruent, your words congruent, the way you show up congruent. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and look, it's not about necessarily doing what you want to do, right? I mean, sometimes at work you got a job to do, whether you want to do it or not. Sometimes you got to go in and you got to let this employee go, and you're like, I don't want to do this, and it's okay to struggle with that, and it's okay to deal with that, but it's just sort of like a task you have to do. And then I also think, like, when we talk about political and religious beliefs, like, there's a huge difference between wearing a necklace that just expresses you versus, blaring, worship music throughout the office, like forcing everybody to listen to something that they don't want to listen to. Those are just very different ways. So you can still be authentic, be true to yourself, express yourself. And let's make it about something more commonplace. Maybe you're a really big, shorts and flip-flop guy. You love your shorts and flip-flops, right? And that's where you feel comfortable. That's your authentic self. But you went and you got a brand new job at upper management at Blockbuster, right? Because they're going to be around for a long time. So you got this big wig upper management job, and now you find yourself in a suit and tie, and you're like, I don't like how this makes me feel, But it's highly inappropriate for you to show up in shorts and a flip-flop. So you got to ask yourself this. You got to ask yourself this question, which is, am I living my authentic self? Or should I go and find a new job that allows me to be in flip-flops? Which there are jobs out there that do. Lifeguard, that stands out, right? There are jobs out there where it doesn't matter, or work from home, or whatever, whatever it is. Or do I like this job and I like what I'm doing, and I want to kind of develop this professional core value of, between the hours of 9 to 5, I got this tie on and I'm wearing this thing. But as soon as I get home, I pull that off, flip-flops come on. I might even keep my shorts and flip-flops in my trunk and just change in the parking lot, and I think that's okay. There's nothing about that that's being inauthentic,
That's right. Because you're being inappropriate in an environment doesn't mean that you are selling your soul to a degree. That's really well put. Thank you. It's been a great discussion, actually. I hope our listeners and our viewers get heaps of value from this. So, and I'm already thinking part 2 one day down the track in 6 or 12 months' time, Dr. Taylor, and really going into some of these deeper issues, because I think there's some value in some of these deeper topics for our listeners and our viewers. But until that time, a massive thank you and a massive just gratitude for being available today and making yourself available and, giving us some of your precious time. So thank you very much, Dr. Taylor. It's appreciated.
My pleasure. I'm happy to come back anytime.
Thank you. And if it's not too much trouble, could I ask one huge favor? We got to meet you through an introduction. If there are some humans out there in your world, Dr. Taylor, that you think would be great episode guests for us, who could talk on the topic of influence or leadership, or all the big topics that we unpack, that would be super, if that's okay. If we could send you an email, if you're able to make that intro, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Dr. Taylor, you're amazing. Thanks a lot for your help, and we'll stay in touch.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening or viewing our Find Your Influence podcast with Anton Guinea. Another great chat. Please be one of the 10% of people who follow and subscribe and like our videos, so that you can get more of them and you can hear more of our amazing conversations, the conversations that I get to have and that I get to share.